Bienvenidos! Hey, my name is Jadley. This is Reading with Your Kids. We are beaming out to you in the entire universe from the beautiful, historical, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. You know, Reading with Your Kids is more than just a podcast. It's a movement. Our mission is to help families grow stronger, closer, and kinder through the magic of reading together. And we are absolutely thrilled that you're joining us in our mission. Please help us grow the show by telling all of your family and friends that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, YouTube, wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Really wonderful show for you today. First up, Rachel Peterson is here to celebrate her new YA title, Killing Sadie. And later in the show, Jeremy Sherr joins us from Tanzania to celebrate his new middle grade novel. It's called The Noble Adventure of Beryl and Carol. Hey, my friends, today we're absolutely delighted to celebrate a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read, Charlie's Turtle Triumph, a marine biology adventure written by Vicki Scott Burns. You know, one of my favorite things about kids' books is when they quietly inspire a child to imagine a future they may never have considered before. That's exactly what this wonderful book does. The story begins with Charlie and her classmates on what seems like an ordinary field trip to an aquarium. But as often happens in life, an ordinary day becomes extraordinary. Charlie meets Dr. Grace, a marine biologist whose passion for rescuing endangered sea turtles opens an entire new world of possibilities. What I love is that this book never feels like a science lesson. Instead, Vicki Scott Burns invites young readers to discover marine biology through Charlie's eyes. As Charlie's curiosity grows, so does ours. We learn about sea turtles, ocean conservation, and caring for our planet because we genuinely care about what Charlie is experiencing. The illustrations by Mel Schroeder are bright, inviting, and absolutely full of life. They perfectly capture both the beauty of the ocean and the excitement of discovery. But beneath the adventure lies an even bigger message. This book reminds kids that every great dream begins with a question. What if I could help? What if I became a scientist? What if I could make a difference? These are powerful questions for a young reader to begin asking. You know, I also appreciate how naturally the story encourages girls and boys to see science as something exciting, creative, and filled with opportunities to help others. STEM isn't just presented as something difficult or intimidating. It's presented as an adventure. At Reading with Your Kids, we believe the best books strengthen family connections while opening doors to new ideas and new dreams. Charlie's Turtle Triumph does exactly that. It celebrates curiosity. It encourages compassion. It inspires environmental stewardship. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds every kid that today's curiosity can become tomorrow's purpose. For its engaging storytelling, beautiful illustrations, inspiring STEM themes, and hopeful message about protecting our oceans, we are proud to name Charlie's Turtle Triumph, a marine biology adventure, our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Congratulations to Vicki Scott Burns, and thank you for creating a story that will inspire countless young readers to dream big, ask questions, and to care for the amazing world around them. Join us right now from the great state of Ohio. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new YA thriller. It's called Killing Sadie. Please welcome to the show, Rachel Peterson. Rachel, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing wonderfully, Jed. How are you?
Wonderful. I have to tell you, Rachel, your book arrived in my home, and when the books get here, typically I open them up in the kitchen, leave them on the table. My beautiful wife comes in, takes a look, whatever. The other day when Killing Sadie showed up, my wife was like, "Hey, what the? This isn't a kid's book. What's going on?"
Was it the bloody cover that gave it away?
It definitely was the bloody cover that gave it away. So what's a nice, happy young person like you doing writing a book about murdering Sadie?
Yes, that is a funny question you should ask, and one that I have heard many a time because, as you can probably tell by chatting with me, I'm a very positive, upbeat person. Aggressively pleasant is a phrase that has been used to describe me in my former professional life. So naturally I'm writing about murder. But I think it all sort of stemmed from, even in my own teenage life, I was a very anxious kid and kind of an anxious teen. And a great escape for me was, oddly enough, reading these kind of worst case scenario, sort of campy, dark, fun thriller novels, and like the same thing with B horror movies. For example, I'm a huge scaredy cat. I couldn't watch a quote unquote real scary movie if my life depended on it. But if it's campy, if it's, fun over the top, that's something that I always enjoyed. And so to me, paradoxically, sometimes the darkest corners are the most fun and also kind of the safest to explore for, an anxious mind.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe you were kind of doing self-therapy by reading those scary books? Like, I'm kind of scared, but if I can get through this book, maybe life will be a little bit easier.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And I think, teens especially deal with their stress, their feelings, emotions in a lot of different ways and find comfort in different forms of entertainment. But it also doesn't necessarily surprise me that, we've seen kind of a stratospheric rise in interest in true crime, interest in these types of novels that deal with grisly, dark murders at a time when we also know that teens and young people are feeling more anxious and more stressed out. And, happily, I grew up kind of just at the dawn of the digital age. So you still were sitting at your parents' desktop computer in your house if you wanted to be online, being yelled at because the landline was cut off since you were using the internet. And, now it's a 24/7 thing, and that's just a whole different ball game. But I think the self-therapy that can come from reading books like this, or whatever sort of that chosen form of escapism is very real.
It's interesting that you mentioned the interest in true crime. Of course, there's a gazillion podcasts about it, and they seem to be all hosted by young women.
Yes. Isn't that fascinating?
It does. Yeah, I'm trying real hard not to go into stereotypes. I don't want anybody getting mad at me, but it's just, I was really surprised. It's like, wow, this is something. And I know my wonderful daughter is a young woman, and lots of her friends are into the true crime stuff. And, so it's fun for me because we have something to talk about. But yes. I'm very surprised by it.
Yeah, I think as a listener, an avid listener of true crime myself, and, one of my personal favorites, which is hosted by two women, is called My Favorite Murder. And they're comedians. They were comedians before they had their true crime podcast. And gosh, that podcast is over 10 years old now, I think.
Wow.
And when I first discovered them, it was a curious realization that there was a really big, particularly like sisterhood around the true crime world. And I think that is part of the fact of being perhaps more heightened in your awareness of risk. As a young woman, especially, I spent a decade living in New York City. So, thinking about safety, thinking about risk, but then also at the same time as you're thinking about, again, the anxious mind, like what is the worst case scenario? You're thinking about that, but you're within this sort of safety of a hive mind, if you will, of this sisterhood that, hey, we have each other's backs. We're checking in on each other. Be aware of this, but not so that you're scared to go out anywhere, but more so that you feel empowered and knowledgeable and kind of prepared, if you will, for a worst case scenario. But it is very interesting that there is such a focus and strong audience within the true crime world that is specifically women and female identifying folks.
Yeah. So tell us about Sadie. Who wants to kill her?
Well, I can't tell you exactly who wants to kill her, although by the time you get through the book, you may realize more than one person wanted her dead.
Oh, poor Sadie.
I know. She never saw it coming, the poor thing. And so when I was working on this book, it's told from multiple points of view. the morning after the murder, her best friend, her boyfriend, and her twin sister are all being questioned by the police about what happened. And so you know from the start, Sadie is dead. It's not a red herring. She really is dead. I did have a couple of early readers who said, I thought for sure she wasn't going to die in the end. So the title is true. I'm not giving away anything that isn't on the cover of the book. But I think, being able to explore what happened in the aftermath through this sort of interview format in this very kind of tight, enclosed space, exposes sort of the increased levels of stress and intensity that these teens are feeling as they're fielding these questions. But then we also have some flashbacks that give you, a further sense of what was going on that led up to all of this. And then in the final act, you actually hear from Sadie, which I love. Her section is Dead Girl Talking, and that's when you have the opportunity to, if you haven't figured it out already, you know who's lying, and it's kind of everyone, but what you don't know is why, and which of the lies matter and which are just, sort of something that is inconsequential or off to the side or something that matters to the character but not to the case. So it was really fun to weave all of these little half-truths, untruths, lies throughout the stories that the characters are telling.
So cool. I'm curious, when you started writing the book, did you know at the outset who killed Sadie?
I did, but I didn't have an idea quite of how we were going to get there. Okay. And that's very much how I tend to write. I sort of work with my wonderful editor at Simon & Schuster, Kara, and we have a story map that sort of, here are the main points along the way that we want to make sure we're hitting so that you don't get too lost, going off in one direction or another. But how you get to each of those points, that's where I really have a lot of fun, because I know, these 4 things are going to happen, but I don't know how they're going to happen or which character may end up being the one who instigates a certain event. And so that's a really fun part of the writing, is that, I'm one of those writers who likes to say, my characters will tell me. And sometimes they surprise me. I'm working on something, I'm like, oh, I didn't think you would be the one to do this, but I guess you are. So we're going to, see how we go.
Talk a little bit more about that. I know that, we've talked a lot about characters surprising writers, and even though we've talked a lot about it, we still have people say, what do you mean? You're creating the character. How can that creation of yours surprise you?
Yes, it's an interesting phenomenon, because I'm friends with writers who feel the same way that their characters surprise them, and then I am friends with others who say, oh no, I know exactly how my character is going to behave, and that's how they behave. But, one of the things that I do when I'm writing, especially to be writing in multiple points of view, and especially, we have both Ben, Sadie's boyfriend, and then we also have, her best friend Liz. These are very different characters. So I build out sort of playlists for each one of my characters that I listen to when I'm working on their section to kind of get me into who they are, how they are, especially, embodying a teen boy. Is a very different experience than, of course, when I'm working with the characters of Liz or Jane or Sadie. I can draw from my own teenage experience in a different way. So I've got my playlists, and a lot of times it's just the dialogue-driven stuff that is where you start to get surprised, because I love dialogue. I write in very quick, feverish bursts, normally for 2-ish hours at a time, anywhere from, 1,500 to 3,000 words. Sometimes it depends on the day. So I'm very much I write first and I don't look back at anything that I wrote before. I can't look at it until the whole thing is done. And that's where, when you're kind of getting in the flow state, you're listening to the music, it's oh, maybe my characters are now developed enough that they're behaving in the way that they authentically would behave, versus how I, especially as, a woman in her late 30s, would think of a teenage character behaving. That's different than how they may actually behave. And so I think the more you can kind of get into the character's mood, what they're thinking, how they respond to things, that's where kind of you can be surprised, which is very neat.
You are the first author who has revealed that you have playlists for your different characters.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like it seems like a common thing, but yeah, I'm a playlist junkie.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So the boyfriend, can you give us an idea of what the boyfriend's listening to?
Yeah, boyfriend listens to a lot of country music, a lot of kind of country and rap synthesis. He very much thinks of himself as like this very cool, kind of tough, popular guy. And so he listens to music that's very focused on the ego, I guess you could say, and sort of his choices. And I'm not necessarily someone who listens to a lot of modern country music myself. So it was interesting to just go in and pluck and looking into what's popular right now. Like, what are teens listening to? And then, we've got our character Jane, who's Sadie's twin sister. She really thinks of herself as being more of an original, kind of, she can't wait to shake the dust of the town off of her feet and go on and do something new. And she listens to a lot of old alt rock from the 90s, which is very much, again, kind of establishing herself as different. And then you have Sadie, who's very into, whatever the top pop music is right now. So yeah, but it's curious because now if I happen to hear a song, on the radio or something that I use for one of my characters, I'm like, oh, this is one of Ben's songs. It's its own mood for sure.
How much of Sadie's character did you have to kind of flesh out since she dies right in the beginning of the book?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I wrote her section kind of last, the dead girl talking section that does come at the end of the book. I wrote it last, and it actually was a way for me to get to know her through the lens of all of these other characters who were talking about her before we got to her. And so that was something that, let me kind of piece together, here is how everyone else sees her, and then what is the blank space that remains? And that is very much something that I think any adult, any teen can relate to. Here is your relationship to all of the other people in your life and what they think of you, but then what is you? What are you independent of those relationships? And especially as a teenager, I remember how frustrating it felt when you're so close to independence. You're so close to being out on your own, but you're also still living in a world where one moment you might be treated like an adult, but the next you're treated like a child. And so kind of the frustrations that live within there and how you see yourself as a teen and sometimes how very firmly you hold on to what that is, this is who I am. A lot of that kind of informed the frustrations that you get a sense of with Sadie as she's going through, here's how everyone else sees me and they're all wrong. And, then how does she see herself? Which is interesting.
I'm curious if at any time did you feel bad about killing Sadie so early?
So yes, I feel, and I'm working on another thriller now, and once again, I feel badly about things having to go the way they do for certain characters. But that's also, I think, if my writing was very much grounded in sort of reality and true crime, etc., I think it would be much harder. But I am very intentional in what I do, that there is a sense of fun and camp to it. Sort of if you're watching an old B-level slasher movie, you feel bad, that all these poor teens are just being picked off left and right. But it's not the visceral emotional reaction of oh my goodness, I feel like I deeply know this person. And so the characters in Killing Sadie, they are fully fleshed out, but they're also very complex and not necessarily likable, which is also something that I care a lot about in sort of when you're writing, these are people doing terrible things. And so in their own ways, it's funny. My mother, who read an early copy of the book, she texted me and she said, "They're all so awful, but in very creative ways." So that I think is the best way to describe, and also how I, sort of protect myself and ideally readers. I want them to be invested, but your heart should not be shattered at the end of this book. It should be a safe, fun way to escape and go through all of these feelings and emotions without, a truly intense or visceral feeling about it.
Right. Sounds like fun. One of the things we love to do, because it was something I did, is we encourage families not only to read with their kids when they're cuddly and curled up on the couch together when they're young, but continue to read with your kids as they read independently and move on to middle grade and even YA. What kind of conversations do you think a parent and a kid can have if they're co-reading Killing Sadie together and having conversations on the way to school or around the dinner table?
Yes. First of all, I love this as a sentiment. One of the things that is sort of a standout of my young adult life is that my dad and I actually read The Hunger Games together. And we went to go see all the movies, and like we had that experience together, which was very cool and not something that I was actually aware of a lot of my other friends' families or particularly their fathers doing. So kudos to Papa P for that one, because that was very cool. But that also gave me the window into how you can have conversations about, you know, a story that is seemingly unrelated to your daily life. And of course, Killing Sadie is grounded in real high school experience versus a dystopian future. But I think one of the things I really cared about when writing this book was that the relationships in it that are unhealthy are called out as being unhealthy. And the book deals a lot with the idea of perception of truth and with the pressures of, you know, Sadie specifically. Everyone thinks that her relationship with her boyfriend Ben is perfect, including her parents. And when he does things that make her uncomfortable, everyone says, oh no, that shouldn't make you uncomfortable. That's romantic. This is what romance looks like. We think this is charming. And a big sort of sticking point for me of the book is it does not matter if others think something is charming. If you, as like specifically the teen in the relationship, if you feel uncomfortable, then it's uncomfortable, period. And I think that is really helpful when thinking about, especially, you know, being someone who's now closer to 40, certainly than I am to being a teen, but understanding as a parent how you perceive things, how you're seeing things is going to be different than how your teen is seeing them. And you could experience exactly the same thing, the same scenario together as a family and have different perceptions of it. And being open to not prescribing your perception of something to your teen and saying, that was interesting. Like, how did you feel about that? And I think that's one of the sort of nuggets that's buried within Sadie in multiple points is everyone assuming that their version of perception or their version of truth is the truth. But then there are all of these sort of misunderstandings, all of these ultimately, you know, catastrophes that come about because of that lack of listening or that insistence that, well, the way I remember things, the way I see things is the way they are, period. And so I think there are a lot of questions to be answered and a lot of discussions to be had about that.
Yeah, I really love that. And I would really love for the dads out there talking to their kids, whether it's a boy or a girl, reinforce that message of, if it ain't feeling comfortable to you, it's not comfortable, period. Yeah. Bang, you know?
Yes, that's it. It's not a question. Like the feeling is valid and you have a right to do whatever you then need to extract yourself from whatever is making you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an important thing. Boy, and did my kids hear that from me? They probably
Absolutely. Oh, that's something I heard all the time, and rightly so. Rightly so.
Right. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of pressure on young people to just kind of go with the flow. You know, we all have to believe in the same thing. We're on team whatever, and so if team whatever says this is right, then I gotta kind of go there, and you don't have to. Yeah, exactly. And I think too, one of the other interesting points within this book that is also worth sort of noting is how our characters behave depending on who they're around. And one great example of this is, again, Sadie's boyfriend, Ben. He's a very polite, respectful guy until he is faced with, there's a female detective in the story, Detective Bud, who did not exist. This is a good example of going back to like story map. There was no Detective Bud. And then she just showed up one day because I was thinking we need to see how, like, Ben is very respectful with
the older men that he deals with in his life, and sort of all of the women who think, oh, isn't he so sweet? And then a female character in a position of authority starts to question him and his version of events, and he can't handle that. This sort of veneer of respect falls away real quick. And that was something interesting too, because I think we've all known someone who behaves one way right up until the second that they perceive that they've been, treated wrong, or like, that was disrespectful. You're disrespecting me. And in a second they can flip. And so that was an interesting thing to write about, but also an interesting thing that my hope as teens read the book, if there's an element of anything within that character that makes a reader think, oh, that kind of makes me think of so-and-so. Or, I mean, worst case, my partner's kind of like that. Like my boyfriend or my girlfriend's kind of like that. It can help to experience these behaviors through characters, because it makes you feel less defensive if you're seeing those behaviors in your own life, because no one's accusing you or no one's accusing anyone of behaving a certain way. But if you're seeing those behaviors played out in fictional characters and perhaps recognizing certain patterns, I think that can be a very powerful way to open a conversation for teens, but also for parents. If they're reading this book and they're saying, oh, that reminds me, or like, my child's friend kind of behaves like this character. Like, do I need to be just like asking more questions about that friendship, or does my child's friend need help? Do they need me to, step in and ask them more questions about, what's going on in their life? So I think there's a very sort of passive but powerful invitation to conversation when we can experience dangerous situations through characters. Yeah. No, absolutely. We've talked a lot about that here on the podcast. I think so many good things can come from this book that shocked my wife with the bloody cover. I know. It doesn't look like it's gonna deliver on some potentially, very grounding and insightful conversations. But that's also, sort of part of the fun of it, right? It's the books you never expect. Right. That can lead you down to some really amazing conversations. Yeah, absolutely. We should tell everybody where they can go to find, other than my kitchen table, to find out more about Killing Sadie and find out more about you. Yes. So to find out more about both me and the book, you can head to my website, which is rachelpetersonauthor.com. You can also find me on Instagram at rachelpetersonauthor. And then, of course, to find out where you can get a copy of Killing Sadie, which is coming out on August 4th, you can find that information on my website or on simonandschuster.com. If you just type in Killing Sadie, it will take you to the right place, and it will be available just about everywhere that books are sold, which is very exciting. Yes, absolutely. Hey, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on the show. We've had a great time talking to the author of Killing Sadie. Our guest has been Rachel Peterson. Thanks, Rachel. Thank you so much, Jed. It was a pleasure. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place.
Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. Hey, this is a message for all the authors that are listening. You know, you worked hard on your book. You spent months, maybe years, writing, revising, dreaming, and believing. You created characters, solved problems, overcame doubts, and brought a story into the world that only you could tell. Now it's time to help readers discover it. The Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program was created to celebrate outstanding children's books and to help authors reach more families. When a book earns our seal of approval, we don't stop with an award certificate. We review the book, feature it on the podcast, share it across social media, and help introduce it to parents, teachers, librarians, and caregivers who are looking for great books to share with kids. Because your story matters. And the families who need your story deserve a chance to find it. Please visit readingwithyourkids.com and click the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to learn more. That's readingwithyourkids.com. Let your book find the readers it was written for. Join us right now from the wonderful nation of Tanzania. Our guest is here today to celebrate his middle grade novel, the award-winning middle grade novel. It's called The Noble Adventure of Beryl and Carol. Please welcome to the show, Jeremy Sherr. Jeremy, how are you?
All is good, Jed. Lovely to talk to you. It's 1:00 in the morning here in Tanzania, and I'm excited and fired up to talk to you.
Well, I'm very excited to have you and honored that you stayed up so late to speak to us. Let's talk about who Beryl and Carol are.
Okay, well, they are two young ladies the age of 12, and they are living in the west of England. This is countryside where I lived in for many years, and they go on a long, convoluted adventure with many challenges and many turns on it. So those are the two heroines of the story.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Tell me, can you share some of the adventures with us without revealing any spoilers?
Sure. Well, they start off as very timid, lacking in confidence, and they're being bullied in school. And to escape these bullies, they have to go into a forest, which is known locally as a forbidden forest because some tragic event happened there many years before. But they have to hide in there. And that is, I'll give you the beginning. They find a gorgeous clearing in the wood full of flowers and wonderful trees, an oak tree, a willow, and just a wonderful place. And nobody goes there because it's a forbidden forest. So they start going there regularly. It's a refuge for them. And eventually they decide they're going to build a little house there. And from that begins a long story of they find some clues to a treasure, and they are on a summer-long search for this treasure, which maybe they'll find and maybe they won't, but it's full of challenges of both intellectual and moral challenges. So that's the idea, yeah. And it culminates in quite a big thing, yeah.
I understand that this story began as a story that you told your kids at bedtime.
Yep, correct. I'm sure I know a lot of kids' stories start like that, but I'm very pleased that your website, your organization is called Reading with Your Kids, because this is what this book is about. I have 6 kids, and 4 of them are girls with a large gap between them. So I started off telling it to my 2 older girls. We were living in that area of England at the time. And then about 15 years later, I carried on. I told it again to my younger girls when we were already living in Africa. So it evolved with time. And it was the bedtime treat. I tell them a bit of the story every day and leave them gagging for the next episode.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's built. The story is designed for parents to read with their kids before bed. And so the chapters are deliberately quite short. It's that 5 to 10 minutes read that makes all the difference to kids and parents' relationships. That's what you are saying, and that's what I agree with. It's so good to read with them. And it always ends with a cliffhanger so that they, they're really looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I live in Africa is because my wife and I have an NGO organization here where we have many natural health clinics, free clinics for African people. We have 19 free clinics, and our work is voluntary here. So every day I would drive to the clinic, sometimes quite a long way away, maybe 2 or 3 hours even. And then on the way, I'd be kind of working out what the next episode would be. So by the time I came home, I had an episode ready for them. And, by the time I finished, I thought, well, I'm going to write this out. It took me 10 years to write it. I have written a lot of professional books in my profession, but this is my first fiction.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Did you have to write down? Cause there's a thing, and it still makes me crazy to this day. There's one night I told my kids a story, and they loved it. And the next night they said, "Tell us that story again." And I said, "What story are you talking? What are you talking about?" And I had no recognition, and they were just going on. And it would have been a bestseller, but it just went away. Did you have to write notes as you were driving back to keep the story?
I did not write notes. I have a good memory. I remembered it, and obviously I developed it a bit when I was writing it. But if I didn't remember something, my kids did. So they could always trigger me off.
Yeah.
But, it's... I'm really happy with this book because, behind the adventures, this is a fun book to read, and a lot of adults love it as much as kids do. In fact, a lot of adults told me that they're reading it to the kids and then they can't stop and they just carry on reading it in the night. But really, interwoven inside, it's a book with values and with, It's a book that is wholesome, without taking away from the adventure, but it's giving kids those values that we parents want to instill in them of facing challenges, of courage, and I'd say more than anything of integrity. Mm-hmm. It's a book that, because what happens is these two girls start off as these very timid, somewhat bullied girls. It's not severe, but it's bothersome. And then along the way, they have to face choices all the time. And the choices are the easy way out, the convenient easy way out, or the choice that is harder but has moral integrity to it. And just because of the way they are together, they always choose this path of more integrity, which is harder. And by doing that, you see that they actually upgrade themselves all the time. So as characters, they become more full of integrity, more full of resourcefulness, and this is nice to see how that develops. And this is part of the message. That's why it's called The Noble Adventures of Beryl and Carol, because they begin from, simple tin soldiers, and they develop themselves into to have this kind of integrity through the hard choices, the hard knocks. So I like that part of it because that's what I wanted to instill in my kids. And I think your readers probably know it's not easy to find a nice adventure with a message these days. I had problems, my wife and I, when we looked for books that, were both real and wholesome. I mean, I don't put in no dragons, no fantasy, no fairies. I'll keep it down to earth. But it's not easy to find books that are, with values and a good message. And this was important for me in the whole story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've talked a lot here on the podcast about how much more effective it is for our kids to see us modeling good behavior and good habits as opposed to just telling them they should do it. And by the same way, it's really, I think, more effective when we're talking about values, talking about being a noble person, a person with integrity, to do it through the lens of story. When kids are seeing it, and we can have a conversation about, well, what do you think, when Carol did this, what do you think she was saying? Why do you think Beryl made that choice?
Exactly that. I mean, it's much more effective through somebody else, because if we just lecture to our kids, it kind of bounces off them.
Sure.
But when they see, especially when they see somebody their age, and this book is suitable for 6 years olds to up to 102 years old. But, most of the kids that read at age 8, 9, 10, they're looking up to these two girls and therefore learning from them.
Yeah. So very important. I wanted to touch a little bit on what you're doing and the mission that you have in Tanzania. I understand that you're an expert in homeopathics.
Yeah,
and
I am a kind of, I teach homeopathy worldwide. I've taught internationally for 45 years, and a postgraduate level, so I am kind of a world expert. And because I had that privilege, that gift, which came to be through a lot of support through my students, I was able to come over here because I'm born in Africa. I'm actually third generation African. And the way it came about is that in the 90s, I was treating a lot of AIDS worldwide. In New York, in Moscow, in Tel Aviv, in London, because I was traveling and teaching, and AIDS was exploding.
Yeah.
And the way homeopathy works is specifically by stimulating the immune system. So for AIDS, which is acquired immune deficiency, it was particularly effective, and I was surprised, even myself. I'm, of course, a great believer, but I was surprised to see how effective it was. And then, I realized at some time, if there are 28 million people in Africa with AIDS at the time, and if we can help, then it's not a choice. It's something we've got to do. That was our noble choice. It was a difficult path. It still is. It's full of challenges, but the joy we get from treating local people who don't have any health options. For instance, just this week we went out to the Maasai tribe. They live about 4 hours away in the middle of nowhere, and we treated about 50 people in a day. They walk. They can walk 10 or 20 miles to come and see us, and it's their only health resort. And they love the homeopathy. They appreciate it very much. It helps them. So we get a lot of satisfaction from that.
Wow,
yeah.
What a beautiful thing. When you said that the homeopathy stimulates the immune system, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's how it works. It's very small doses, but because they are very highly directed and they take the whole person into account, then what it does, it's not herbalism as a lot of people imagine it. It's more specific. It's directing a natural medicine in a very small amount to like a catalyst to stimulate the immune system to heal itself. That's what we do.
Wow. Why don't we do that more in places like the United States and England?
Exactly that. Yeah. Why don't we do it more all over the world? But, a lot of places, homeopathy is a mainstream medicine. In India, for instance, there's millions of patients, and in England, 20% of people visit homeopaths regularly. So it is very well known, but put it like that, we kind of the black sheep of the medical world, because we're not cost-effective pharmaceutically, put it that way.
I guess you can't make $1 gazillion off it, right?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that. So, so be it. But we heal a lot of people. Homeopathy heals a lot of people. We get a lot of satisfaction. We've taught a lot of people here how to practice. We have Tanzanian practitioners. So it's a great project, and we like living here.
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm curious, the noble adventure of Beryl and Carol, it's won a number of awards, and you seem to have experienced great joy in writing it and sharing it. Are you thinking about writing a second children's book?
Well, in fact, I have the outline for the sequel for the book, and I won a lot of prizes, which is great. And somebody just approached me about a movie. We need the funding, but they've written the script, so it might be out there. So the sequel actually takes us to the same place where you come from, and that's across the canal into Dublin and Ireland. So it's got Irish roots in it, and the book actually takes place in 1997. And this is I like that because, these kids are in the forest, they're dealing with nature, they're learning how to live in nature, how to build a raft, how to build a little cabin, and there are no mobile phones, so it takes kids back to a time when we were kids. And, 1990, 1980, like that, a lot of parents grew up in that time, so they can tell their kids about what was happening at that time, that you couldn't just call your parents, come and pick me up in the car. So it goes, there is history in this book, and there is social history about things that were happening in England and going back to Ireland in 1905. Things that happened then. It's all real history, real events that are interwoven into the story. But, it's like learning to live in nature for these girls, and it's reminding kids, because as we have grown further and further away from nature, kids don't remember so much, especially if they're living in the city or the suburb, about being out there in the river, jumping in the river, making paper boats, building rafts, all that kind of things we used to do as kids. So it's, I think that's a nice part of it, to take kids back to the time where we grew up, really.
Yeah. Yes, we've talked a lot here in the podcast about the fact that being a kid is a lot different these days than it was when our parents shoot us out in the, first thing in the morning and told us to come back home when the street lights come on.
Yeah, exactly that. So, it's a nice thing to instill to our kids, but there's also, another important aspect of it is that there's girl power here. Because these two girls, they develop themselves into much more resourceful and powerful and confident characters. So it's another side of it, is just showing girls, how they can develop girl power, which is not an aggressive power, it's just being in your own self, really. So that's another part we like. Actually, Jed, my whole family was involved in it, because my daughter edited it. My son read the audiobook. He's a voice actor. It's a kind of family thing, this book, in a way.
Wonderful. That's really fun. And I'm sure that adds a lot to the charm of the books, that it is filled with love from your whole family.
Indeed, I think so. It's fun. I think your readers, if they read it, they will have fun. I guarantee it.
Yeah, yeah. So let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the book and find out more about you and maybe find out more about the health clinics that you're establishing.
Well, if you look me up, you'll see our organization is called Homeopathy for Health in Africa. And the book can be seen on jeremysherr.com. And Jeremy is spelled as in Jeremy, and Sherr is SHERR, one word, jeremysherr.com. There you can see the book. You can buy it in Amazon, in Barnes and Noble, and whatever. It's easy to find out there. And and you can see a lot of the reviews and the prizes that it's won and stuff like that.
Wonderful. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author of The Noble Adventure of Beryl and Carol. Our guests.
Yeah, and Jed, before you go, I just want to read to you one little bit of a poem that Carol's father writes for Carol.
Okay, sounds good.
And it's kind of, I won't read you the whole poem. I don't want to, labor your time. But it's kind of the spine of the story because this is what it's about. So I'll just read you the first two little bits, okay?
Okay, great.
Every act of strength leads to another act of strength. Every act of weakness leads to another act of weakness. Courage begets courage. Fear breeds fear. Small acts generate bigger acts. Big acts generate greatness. Facing pain and overcoming difficulties enhances freedom and power.
Beautiful. Very wise words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our guest tonight has been Jeremy Sherr. Jeremy, thank you so very much for being with us.
It's a great pleasure. I don't know if we can call you Jed Lee, or George.
We'll talk about that when we...
Okay. All right, Jed. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and warm wishes to all your readers.
That's a wrap for this episode of Reading with Your Kids. Hey, if this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review and, of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. I want to thank the folks who make today's show so wonderful, starting with our amazing guest, Rachel Peterson. Please be sure to check out Killing Sadie. Also want to thank Jeremy Sherr. Please be sure to check out The Noble Adventure of Beryl and Carol. I want to thank my amazing team, Ella Badier, Daleen Rose Adrina Lopez, Chris Doherty. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the love and support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place and to give your kids every chance to be happy and successful in life. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. Hey, I'll be looking for you for the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.
One bright morning by the ocean blue, a dream came sailing into view. A turtle swam with quiet grace, and wonder lit a young girl's face. She asked, who helps them every day? A scientist smiled and showed the way. With every question in her heart, a brand new journey got its start. Every wave has a story, every shell has a song. Every child can discover where they truly belong. Anything is possible, every dream can come alive. One small heart can change tomorrow, one small voice can help us thrive. Side by side we'll make a difference, every kindness leaves its mark. Together we can light the oceans one bright hope against the dark. Anything is possible. A piece of plastic on the shore can mean so much and so much more. So little hands begin to care for every life that's living there. The sea keeps calling, come and see. The future starts with you and me. A curious mind, a caring soul can help the whole world reach its goal. Maybe someday you'll discover something no one's seen before. Maybe you'll protect tomorrow, standing on an open shore. Dream a little, learn a little, love this great big world we share. Anything is possible. Every question lights the way. Every child can be a hero, starting with one choice today. From the beaches to the deep blue, hope is stronger than our fears. We'll protect our world's great treasures for tomorrow's children here. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. We'll leave the oceans better